Welcome to the mentor training session recording that we're producing for all of our partners across the BCU PCET course in order to support your developing target setting support for your trainees who are working with us. I appreciate you may not have been able to attend one of the sessions that we provided on this, and therefore we have carried out this recording just to show you what we were talking about and to show you the additional materials that we will have sent to you about this. For those who are not aware, I'm Stuart Mitchell, course lead for the PGCE course at BCU, and I am joined by
Debbie Grace, who's also visiting lecturer, part of the core team at BCU.
So I sprung that on you.
I was ready.
We're not scripted, by the way. What we would like to go through very quickly, or briefly at least, are the two types of scenario that we think are really important to set targets from on the basis of the type of development and support that we want you to be offering our trainees. From the sessions that we did host where our mentors attended, we had some amazing feedback, some amazing ideas that were suggested of either ideas that were already being used, so targets that had already been set by our mentors for the trainees, or simply suggestions of what they might do in the future. So we know that there is great benefit from thinking about these scenarios and thinking about the type of targets that we can set for the trainees, and hopefully that's going to be really useful. So we're looking at two sets of targets. One that you would set just as a progress, knowing that things are going to happen and therefore prompting targets for future development, and the second would be prompting targets following an observation that you've observed. So that's essentially what we're going to do. All we're going to look at are a couple of examples from each, and then we'll explain the materials and further scenarios that we're going to send or have sent to you. And myself and Debbie are just going to offer a couple of ideas to build on that, the kind of things that may have been mentioned during our discussions, and hopefully will help you to set better targets yourselves. All of our work is based on the ETF workbooks and well, the work that has been done around mentoring and using the on-side model, to which actually BCU were contributors to on the ETF website, and you will find the different frameworks to which we contributed on the ETF website. You'll also find those on our Moodle site as well. But we're not going to look at that. We're going to look at the scenarios. So we wanted to just to set a scene for you. So just have a student that you were looking after. So this is the background information. So it's a mentee who's been working with the group for a short time. She's been doing some teaching, mostly of small chunks of learning, get her teaching more. So here's where the scenarios start. We're going to show you a couple of scenarios, and me and Debbie will just talk about them very briefly, just to give you some ideas of what we thought, but also the contributions that were made by the mentors as well. So scenario one is based on the idea that all learners have to take part in a group session formally assessed by the teacher and peers as part of their course. And as there are a number of people in the group who struggle with working collaboratively, you would like your mentee to plan more activities to help them prepare for the assessment. So this is something that's going to happen in the future, and you know that you want them to be prepared for it. So what kind of targets would you set? How are you going to maximize the opportunities for those trainees to think about, how do I get students working together? How do I get them all contributing equally or to the level that you would expect? What we also would love you to think about, and this is an obvious or a given, I suppose, in your own situations, is the fact that thinking about the actual subject specific ways that you would do this. So not just a generic target, but a target that's based on something that relates directly to their subject specialism. So we actually have a couple of suggestions here, and these are the ones that we're going to discuss and add to. So for scenario 1, where we want them to think about how to get their students working collaboratively, it's different to you thinking about it as a mentor, because you thinking about it as a mentor, you've got perhaps a range of strategies that you'd be able to use and go to straight away. But the trainee won't be in that situation. So instead of just doing it for them, it's thinking, right, how am I going to prompt them to do it? So here are a couple of the suggestions, and me and Debbie will just have a quick chat around those and offer any further ones. So we both hosted those sessions. I don't know if there were other ideas that came out of your discussions, Debbie, but we've got a couple here that you suggested. The plan at least 2 activities, which involve small group work for your session, and using the class profile, allocate learners to specific groups. So those are 2 different ways of doing it. Were there any others that you could think of, or that were raised, Debbie, from the discussions, even if they weren't amazingly different from that?
I don't think they were particularly different, but there was some really there was a real kind of focus on the class profile, and actually encouraging the mentees to not necessarily set up their own class profiles, although that wasn't a bad thing, and certainly try and find as much information out about those learners as possible. But using existing class profiles, certainly, you know, getting their knowledge of the students over the short period of time they've been working with them to help them with the planning. So I think the crucial part of this was getting to know the students. And one of the reasons for kind of setting this and talking to mentors as well, working with a lot of students at the moment, is students can struggle to engage, whether that's something to do with COVID. There do seem to be there are groups where some learners disengaged, and there are times when they need to be engaged, they need to work collaboratively. So there was a lot about getting to know the learners, and using that information that you know about those learners to help you in that planning, and thinking about specifically the learners who you feel would be comfortable working with other learners.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important, in the sense that this isn't a target that simply achieves one outcome. Having a focus on a very extensive review of the students. I don't mean it takes hours. I just mean you are looking at the individuals who are right in front of you. Yes, that is going to help to put them into collaborative groups, but also just to better understand your students as well. So it's a target that achieves one thing, which is, oh, I can put them into the different group. But you're also asking the trainee just to better understand who they're working with, and that has multiple benefits. So it's not a checklist, it's not a tick box exercise, it's not, here's a strategy, do it, oh, you've done it, well done. It's in understanding the students, this will be achieved, but you will also learn other things. And I think what you're saying about, there are a range of reasons why they might not engage, and it might be down to a whole host of factors. Knowing them, that's not just for a collaborative activity. It's actually going to help you immensely, but it's the one target that's manageable. You know, it has an outcome attached to it, doesn't it?
And it just helps with that group cohesion, and it's important to recognise that kind of thing, it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? These kind of targets that we're looking at, yes, they're nice targets which can be achieved. They're reasonably smart targets. Learners can achieve, or our mentees can achieve these. Was a discussion around the whole thing about group cohesion as well, and that's something that takes. And it is something that our mentees need to work on as new teachers. They do need to work on group cohesion and getting learners to work collaboratively, and the importance of that, why that's important, I think.
Absolutely.
So I think it covers quite a lot of areas. So quite a few discussions around that kind of thing about the group cohesion.
And again, we're talking here about targets that you'd be setting the trainees, not because something has happened. So it's not in direct response to an observation. It's forward thinking.
Yeah.
You know, because you are experienced, this is going to happen. You know, there are going to be barriers. And instead of waiting for those to occur with the trainee, which could then cause a trainee to be apprehensive, even perhaps even do the wrong thing, or think they've done the right thing, and it only be for the purpose of, I have sorted out a collaborative group, therefore I have achieved something, and not realized that there's an awful lot of layers behind that. You've prompted them. So this is specifically the class profile thing. You've prompted them to think far more about the environment, the students, and not just one task, but a set of tasks. So I really like that one. And like you say, the discussions that were held with our mentors focused around actually understanding the students, knowing who they are. And that's really, really important. What we did in the sessions was we explored another scenario, and I'll show you the other scenario that we set for you, but we're not going to look at those right now. What I'm simply going to do is show you the document that we will have sent to you. So this is going to appear as if by magic on the screen. And we set a further 4 scenarios, scenario 2, 3, 4, and 5, which allow you opportunity simply to think, right, there are different settings, different scenarios, different tasks. And what we'd like you to do is think about those scenarios. And the version that I think we'll end up sending to you will have some additional suggestions, but we don't want you simply just to take our suggestions.
No.
We want you to think, right, actually, what else can I do? And how can I do it specific to my group and my subject area as well? The second set of scenarios, if we're going on the basis this is the same student, it's the same trainee, we're looking at developmental targets based on an observation. You've seen something happen. This is the key. And we start off with scenario 1, which is a very common feature. And it's not just a common feature of trainee teachers. It can be a common feature of any teacher that's under a lot of stress or pressure, that you end up doing the thing that works, so you do it 3 times instead of mixing it up. So in this scenario, Mentee taught a lesson where the learners were given 3 tasks, involved the completion of worksheets. By the end of the session, the learners were bored and reluctant to complete the final worksheet. And again, we explore some targets of how you might respond to this and get the trainee to think of different things. So of course we're going to show you them, and we're going to have a quick chat about any other suggestions that came out of the discussion. So again, what targets would you set in this? Just a couple of examples here, and again we'll pick up on any other suggestions that we got from the sessions that we hosted. So we could ask the trainees to research at least 3 ways of formatively assessing students, essentially that don't involve the use of worksheets, and then to trial at least one of these different assessment strategies by your next observed session and evaluate, comparing to assessment with worksheets. So again, layered targets, which allow them to think it's not just change, it's why, it's the how, what's effective actually. And again, there'll have been other suggestions as well, weren't there, from our discussions?
Yeah, we had some good discussion around this, and I think the important thing to think about as well is these are all part of a much bigger conversation that you're going to have with your mentee as well. So they're not kind of, we've sort of selected some in isolation, but obviously one of the key things that came out is you're going to have quite a few discussions with your mentees anyway about this. And it might involve sharing some ideas. I think there were some ideas as well in the groups that I talked about getting mentees to go and observe different teachers as well. I think that was an important thing. So it's not just seeing one teaching style. So seeing different teachers. breaking tasks down and thinking more about those particular tasks was an important one, and thinking about just trying to think of other ways of being able to check learning without students constantly, you know, writing things down. And again, it was that we had some links to the kind of collaborative exercises as well, so getting students perhaps to work together. I think we'd got some suggestions about even peer assessment strategies as they're in there as well. So it's thinking a little bit differently in terms of it's not always appropriate just to write things down on a worksheet, but and it's also a collaborative approach. I think those were some things that came out of that particular discussion.
And again, they are targets that don't stop at just saying don't do that or do this. It's have a think. There are other ways. There are other people to see. And it's not that it's a bad thing to do lots of worksheets. It's about how you do the worksheets. And therefore, okay, you can do 3 worksheets, but if you did 3 worksheets in 3 completely different ways, the students may respond in different ways. But instead of just telling the trainee, do this, you're prompting them to think, and that it is really about the agency of the trainee, because eventually they're in the classroom on their own planning. And it's not that nobody cares how they're doing, but nobody will have the time or space to actually be there to check everything that takes place. So that trainee's got to be confident in the classroom. I've planned a session, and even if there are 3 worksheets, actually I've learned from the first time I did that, because they were so bored, and the feedback I got, the targets I got, allowed me to explore how to do that differently. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at how I do that differently. I've learned from observing other people. I've learned from the different strategies. I've learned how to mix it up, how to change the pace. But it all generated from the target that was set from that one observed session. And again, it's understanding that the targets have a bigger impact than just a tick box exercise. That I see this in this session, you have used 3 different techniques. Well done. It's why did you do that? What were the benefits of it? And again, it's similar to the first scenario where we were looking into the future. What do they need to do in the future? It's way bigger than just changing something. And as a mentor, as an experienced teacher, we do have a range of strategies that we can go to. We can change up very quickly, you know, in an instant, how to change that. But trainees, we're wanting to support a little bit more. So again, those suggestions that you were making just offer that wider scope of development. And again, that's very important.
But that conversation was crucial. We realized how important that conversation was, and asking those why questions. So why have you done this then? Why have you done this? And it's that discussion. It's not about, well, you didn't do that, so next time you've got to do this. It's that discussion, isn't it, around it, that's the crucial thing, really.
Absolutely. But we know that if you have a target on its own, it will or won't be achieved. If it's not achieved, it just carries over. If it is achieved, it's ticked. But the conversation, like you say, develops far more. So the targets can be used as a kind of consolidation of, we've talked about this, you've done things around this, you've actually focused on a whole host of other issues. We can still use the targets to track their progression, but we know because of those conversations that you mentioned, there's the whole host of other points being talked about. So again, that's something that we're happy to obviously continue supporting our mentors with, and hopefully not feel afraid that you can have those conversations, not to expect perfection, because nobody's perfect, but to expect the trainees to think about things and to set them challenging targets that don't just give them the answer, but give them opportunity to find the answer with the support that you're offering, and alongside the support that we will also offer to them as well. In this set of scenarios, sorry, carry on.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's gradually passing that ownership onto them, isn't it? Really, that's what it's about.
I'm all about developing agency, because, like I say, at the end of the day, you're on your own in the classroom, and And again, it's not that no one cares, it's just no one's around, and you're not going to have the critical friend. You're not going to have somebody to say, oh, have you thought about changing that? You're doing it. And all of our mentors know that on the basis that they've been there. They've been there themselves. And to have these prompts, and this is why we like to have that relationship developed between the mentor and trainee, because we know you've been there before. And some of you will have had the kind of guidance that you offer to your trainees. Some of you won't have had that guidance. Some of you will have had to have worked it out for yourself and not had the level of support. And we don't want trainees, any teacher, to be in that situation. We want them to be having those conversations and to be asked those why questions, and the what now, and how are we going to do it, and how are you going to elevate that, and the things that you're doing really well, how do you translate those into other areas of your practice? And that really is I suppose the joy of being a mentor, that you can see that agency shift, and you also get to pinch a lot of ideas as well.
Exactly.
Which is where most of my work has come from. Along with that scenario, obviously, we've also suggested another set of different scenarios under the guise of you have seen this happen, and therefore there are a further 4 scenarios that we give. And again, we will provide a couple of prompts, but we really want you to think about, what would I do? How can I use these in my own practice? So it's going to be beneficial to our trainees, but hopefully it's also going to be really beneficial to you as well. And that really is our key focus. We don't just do this for the trainees, we do it because we know that relationship can be really beneficial to you as also. I think we've spoken enough now. And therefore, I think it's a really nice time to wrap up, because of course we could carry on talking about all of the scenarios and everything that we've ever written and known, but really it's over to you. And we'd love you to get in touch if you need any further support, either with one of our team at the BCU cohort or any of our partners across our partnership team as well. If you do have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. And you can also see this video along with a range of other supporting videos on our YouTube playlist on the BCU ITE Mentor Support channel. So thank you very much for your time, and wish you all the very best, and we'll be seeing you soon, I'm sure. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you for all your support, mentors, I should say.
Okay, and goodbye.